Hi everybody, it's Taheerah. Thanks so much for joining me today. You might be coming to this video courtesy of Splitcoaststampers. If you are, welcome! I was asked to create this video to show you how I made this watercolor marble card. I made this card back in February for Winnie and Walter's gossip column, and it picked up a lot of compliments. Marble's a big trend at the moment, so this card couldn't have come at a better time. So let me show you how I made it. It's not that difficult at all, so let's get started. The first thing when creating a watercolor background like this is to use a piece of cardstock that is thick enough to take the water. I'm using some letterpress cardstock here, and I'm going to be using some distress inks for my watercoloring, so I'm just pulling those off to one side. With a background like this, it might look quite intimidating, but that's why I'm using this image from Pinterest to guide me with my inspiration. I'm going to start by laying a wash of water over my cardstock and letting that seep in so that my cardstock is nice and wet to take all of that watercolor without having some harsh lines. I'm going to use a glass desk for my crafting, and that means that I can actually double up using it as a palette. So I'm laying off my distress ink cubes to one side. I've got the greens on one side, evergreen bough, cracked pistachio and ice spruce, and for my greys I'm using weathered wood, hickory smoke and black soot. I'm spritzing each of the inks with some water just to get that ink moving freely. And once I've laid out my palette, I'm ready to start my watercolouring. I'm sure that you've seen that marble has lots of different colours and lots of gorgeous looks, so you don't actually have to use these colours. I'm just using them because I wanted something a little bit different. Right, so now that I've got my palette all ready, I'm starting by laying a wash of one of my pale colours. I'm starting with the ice spruce, and I'm using a fairly wide brush just to lay some random blobs. And I know it doesn't look very exciting or interesting at the moment, but trust me, we're going to build this up with some of the different colours, and it's going to create a gorgeous marble effect by the end of it. Now that I've got my first wash of greys down, I can start to layer on some of those greens, and because that cardstock is nice and wet, the colours are going to blend beautifully together and we're not going to get any harsh lines. I know it still looks kind of blobby at the moment, but trust me, it's going to look gorgeous when it's done. I'm going to start to bring in some lighter strokes to just start to make some of those veins in the marbled kind of look. And I'm still bringing in that in the greys and the greens to really blend them together. So I'm just going to keep blending and adding extra layers, and now I'm going to start with some finer detail. I'm bringing in the black soot and a finer paintbrush and just starting to paint in some of those veins. And I'm layering the colours on top, and you can see they're still washing and blending together, and I can use a tissue to dab up any of the excess if it's going in places that I don't want. So I'm going to keep layering and blending my colours together, but once I want to add some finer detail, I'm going to have to dry that cardstock off so that the water doesn't move the colour around so much. So here I am with my heat tool, just heating the cardstock to dry it, and once it's dry, I can start to bring in some finer detail with my fine paintbrush, and because the cardstock is dry, it won't blend the colours so much. So I'm going to throw this into faster motion so you can just see what I'm doing. It's basically just layering the colours together, layering the depth of the shades and adding some finer detail. So here we go. And look at me go. I wish I could actually watercolour this quickly. In reality, in real time, this card took maybe about half an hour to paint the background. So you just want to actually take your time and not rush with this. If you rush, then you won't be pleased with the results. So just take your time. Don't go as fast as this video is making you think, and just add the colour, lay the lines and the details on, and don't be afraid to just let the water do some of the work for you. That's one of the great things about the watercolour, right? It's a very forgiving medium, and you don't have to be an expert, unless you want to do really fancy watercolour, which, well, you know, then you do. So anyway, I'm bringing in a very fine paintbrush to do some of the very fine veins, and the marble piece now, well, this watercolour piece, is really starting to look like marble. I'm really pleased with it. Once you finish doing all your watercolouring, you want to give the cardstock a good dry, and then you can actually use it for the card. So I've dried off my panel and I've cleaned up my desk because I want to be nice and conscientious, and now my panel is ready to use on a card base. I'm going to use some score tape to adhere my card panel to my card base, and this is nice strong tape so it will minimise any warping that has occurred on the panel from all of that watercolour and also from drying it with the heat tool. So covering my entire back of the panel with some score tape, and then I'm going to peel off the backing paper once I've finally decided which way round I want the panel to go, and then I'm going to adhere it in place. And a tip I use when I'm going to adhere panels is I get my score buddy and I put my card base in it, and then I use the corners of the score buddy to just line up the card panel and adhere it in place so that it lines up nice and straight. So our card panel is done, but I might as well show you how I finished off the rest of the card. So I'm going to be taking some triangles of some wood paper and some white cardstock. I've already put score tape on the back of these so I can stick them straight down onto the card front. And once those are in place, the next element I'm adding is a banner. This is stamped from a Winnie and Walter set, and I've already cut it out. And I'm going to be using some pin flare glue gel to adhere this banner to the cardstock. Pin flare glue gel is a dimensional glue gel, so it's great for building up custom dimension. And I'm going to be using some label maker sentiments and a die cut word from a Winnie and Walter die, which I've coated in copper metallic sparkly embossing powder. And I'm just using my multi-matte medium to add some glue to the back of that die cut and to adhere it in place. And then to finish off, I've got some label maker sentiments that I've created. I'm just going to peel the backing off of those and use the pin flare glue gel again to add some custom dimension and just stick those one above the shine and one below. And that finishes off this card. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've certainly had a great time filming it for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks so much for joining me at Splitcoaststampers today. I've had a really great time. Take care and see you next time. Bye!